About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening and welcome to this pre-exam question and answer session for paper 2. I am joined this evening by Katie and Craig. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hope both well. And we appear to be joined by an awful lot of you, so that's lovely to see you all. Now I've been reading quite a lot of the comments in the chat window already as they're coming through. And lots of questions and chat in there, which is great. We will try and address them. That is our plan for today, is to address some questions. So do by all means ask them in the chat window, which is fantastic. What was I going to say before we kind of get going and start doing some of these? What I was just going to say was, it is really near the exam. You guys have got this. You've done all your hard work. You've done all your revision. Don't be panicking. There might be things happening in the chat window where you think, oh, I've not heard of that person, or I didn't learn that particular study. You will have learned other studies. It's beauty of sociology is it's not really prescriptive. It's not, if you don't mention that person, you're not going to get the marks. You will have people that you can mention the marks. You'll know theories that you can mention the marks. So we're gonna do this, but I don't want it to be something where you're worrying or panicking. So first question I've just seen, I'm not going to add this one to the screen, but it's just, is this a revision blast? It's not really, no, it's a question and answer session. So this is really an opportunity, for you to ask us questions. We're going to do a bit of revision together essentially, but it's an opportunity for you to ask us questions about the paper and and what you need to do. There's another question there. Is this for family and beliefs? You can ask us about any of them. So for paper 2. So, if you're asking about other optional topics, that's well. Okay. Now there's so many questions coming through. Let's pick on one here. Oh gosh, they come so fast. It's I don't know. I missed it. Sorry. This is really. I do.
Ideology.
Lots of people are. I'm trying to get one of those. Yes.
Yeah.
It was one of the ideology ones I was going to go for first, but I've lost it. Have you got the name of someone that's done?
I just saw the word ideology, and it was.
Oh, here we go. Could the beliefs 20 marker be on? All right, I'll go into an ideology one in a second, but I've got, could the beliefs 20 marker be on the theories of religion? I believe I'm right in saying that it absolutely could be. Yeah, based on the advanced information, it could well be. Yeah.
You could have a nice kind of straightforward evaluate functionist Marxist contributions to our understanding of beliefs. You could have one that sort of like suggests that religion has an ideological basis, and then of course you've got Marxists and feminists who may suggest that religion has an ideological basis. You've got functionalists who might not. You've got people like Bella, who talks about civil religion and how civil religion is pretty much based on an ideology. So you could have a question like that throws in a lot of the different theories.
Yeah.
I think go for it.
No, go on, Katie.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously the core thing here is the idea of potentially theories, and I think what I'm trying to sort of say to you at this point, your theories. There's a lot of application you can use from other topics. So if you sort of thinking, look, it's night before the exam, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know my theories. You do know your theories because the theories crop up and up again in every single unit, and a lot of some of the concepts can be filtered back through into this as stuff that you already know for beliefs as well. And like Craig just said, it could be a straightforward like what's the theory view. But also it could be from an ideological perspective or from a conflict point of view. The key here is application. That's what it is. It's not shoehorning what you know or know into an exam question. It's answering the exam question. So really just take time to read that question. What is it asking you to do? Are those theories the best applicable for that question? Yeah.
Now, actually, although we've got quite a few questions about ideology and religion, and we will come to them, shall we I'm just thinking rather than just scattergun ask us anything, should we kind of go through the paper in a way and just try and kind of have a bit of a structure to it?
Yeah,
so
somebody there was Prislava there who asked about the structure of the essay questions, questions, and that might be a good place to start.
Okay, so should we begin with? Yeah, I'll find that one in a sec. Shall we begin with just? I will find that one. Line it up. Oh, I've obviously spelt the name wrong, but no. Anyway, I'll try and find that in a sec. Shall we begin by just thinking? So you open the paper. Okay, you've got section A and section B. I know this is really basic stuff, but I just think it's important to just go with this. You've done your two. You've been taught 2 topics. Yeah, make sure that you do it. So remember, the first that comes up is culture and identity. So if you haven't done culture and identity, and based on a lot of the comments, a lot of you doing families, you need to turn over. Don't answer the culture and identity questions. Obviously, if you are doing culture and identity, absolutely do that. And then pick your question. You'll do your part A. You can then do the section B, whether it's beliefs, media, stratification. I've seen global development, various people talking about lots of them. Okay, so let's think about the 10 markers first of all then. So you will get an outline and explain and a apply and analyze 10 marker. Has anyone got any questions about your 10 markers? I've seen lots of things about how do you structure your 20 markers, etc. We will get to that, I promise. But has anyone got any questions relating specifically to 10 markers? I'm seeing lots of people asking, can you give us examples of policies to do with families and households? I promise we will.
Sariko, oh gosh, it's just gone now. It's gone. There was a question there about 10 markers, but I can't remember.
Okay,
it's gone.
I've got one here. What's the difference between the 10 markers from Grace? So the difference between the outline and explain and the apply and analyze. So if I start with that, but then I'll let the others come in as well. So the main difference is obviously the apply and analyze has an item. So that's the main difference in terms of what you see. Outline and explain doesn't have an item. Apply and analyze does have an item. More specifically, the outline and explain will bring together two bits of the spec that you may not necessarily have been taught together, where you're applying one bit to another. So I mean, that hopefully you all know that, but if you don't, it's just not to be sort of caught off guard by that or be worried by it when you see, oh, that's not, what's that got to do with that? What's policy got to do with gender identity, or what's whatever it might be. Yeah, the idea is that you make that connection. You won't necessarily have been taught that connection. So that's the outline and explain one. The apply and analyze is the one where you've got to find those hooks in the item, use them, explicitly refer to them. Okay, so that's the main difference. In terms of the actual structure, I don't know if you guys would agree, the actual answer will look pretty similar, won't it? 2 paragraphs, main point, some development, lots of analysis. There is a question from Courtney, which is, do we need to evaluate in the 10 marker? I've lost, oh no, I can stick that one up as well. Yeah, do we need to evaluate in the 10 marker? And I think the right answer to that is you could get 10 out of 10 theoretically without any evaluation in both outline and explain and the apply and analyze. The apply and analyze one mentions some evaluation in the mark scheme. The outline and explain one doesn't. But actually, I don't think there's that much difference. You could have some focused evaluation and be credited for it in the outline and explain. We do expect to see it more in the apply and analyze, but you could get 10 marks without it if it's really analytical and the analysis is done well. Sorry, I'm rambling on, and I said I wouldn't talk too much. Would you agree? Anything?
100%. I'm seeing a lot of questions around conclusions for 10 markers. They're not necessary. So it's just it's going straight into no introduction. I mean, obviously, I appreciate your teachers might have said something slightly different, but it's the idea, if you're thinking about timings, which time is really tight for you guys, it's 2 paragraphs, just reiterating what Duncan said, so there's no need for a conclusion. Would you agree, guys, on that for the 10 markers?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. 2 paragraphs, it's 10 marks, 15 minutes.
Yeah. No intro, no conclusion, but 2 nice, well-developed paragraphs. Yeah. I saw someone said you need...
One reason is...
Yeah.
Second way is, second reason is, and then just write the paragraph. Yeah.
There's a sort of kind of slightly more sort of detailed one here, which I'm just trying to work out if I can work out what it means. I've added it to my favourites just to... Okay. We go. Is demography unlikely to be on childhood and conjugal roles, as they've come up twice in the past? Oh, right.
It can't.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not in the business of predicting questions, and to be honest, they just can, word slightly differently, slightly different approach on it. They can come up again, so I wouldn't I wouldn't assume that. You're saying if it's a 10-mark question, like outline 2 ways that demographic changes might have impacted on conjugal roles or childhood. You're right; those questions, similar questions along those lines, have come up before, but we can't predict that they won't again. It will be worded a bit differently. It'll be a slightly different angle on it. And it could be something completely different, but we can't be sure it won't come up again. Okay. Anything else on 10-mark questions? I'm seeing loads of things about the 20 marks. I know.
I think there's lots of people talking about.
Oh, right.
There's a lot about policies and the ideology element, I think, and noting policies. We can come to that in a minute.
Well,
I think
so we'll definitely
markers.
Oh, right. Who has, sorry?
Abby has gone.
Okay. I'll find Abby in a second. We will definitely spend a bit of time on family and household policies and ideology and science, I promise, because I know there are lots of questions about that. Do you have to include sociologists' names to get marks in the 10 marker? Who wants to take that one?
No.
There's Craig's quick answer.
You can use a bit of research to back up your point, and it helps you to demonstrate greater understanding of a concept, but it is not essential. At this point, do not worry about sociologists' names or dates. That's not important. The concepts that they talk about and the sociology, the actual the findings of the research are far more important than actually knowing their names or what year it was written in.
Yeah. If you know the names, use them, but you don't. Yeah, it's...
I mean, someone said, "Do you get capped if you don't mention sociologists?" And that's it. That's not true. It's about the concepts, and it's the key is the application of those concepts and how they work, rather than just obviously defining them. That's the key. So there's a lot. It's how many, like a couple of you said, how many sociologists you need. It's again, it's not about it's not a formula so much as that. It's again how you apply that information and those concepts. So it isn't about I need X amount of key concepts or X amount of theories as such.
Just when you're talking about capping, the only time that you're going to get limited, right, on a 10-mark question is if you do not reference the item. So in your apply and analyze question, you have to reference the item.
Yeah.
If you don't reference that item, you are going to get capped at 3.
Yeah,
right?
and on the 10 markers, that is the only cap in inverted commas. Yeah, so everything else is just based on is your answer good enough for you answering the question. But that using the item and explicitly using the item is there. We've got a question here from Abby because Katie spotted this one as it went through. It's quite specific to beliefs, and I know not everyone will be doing beliefs, not everyone's doing families either, but we will try and do a range. Can you go over different types of organisations, cults, sects, churches, etc. for 10 markers? I'm just trying to work out quite what you mean, Abby. Are you meaning can we teach you cults, sects and churches again quickly now, or do you mean could that be a 10-mark question? Assuming you mean
looking at new religious movements, new age movements, and whether they're world affirming, whether the difference between cults and sects and stuff like that.
Features as well.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think one thing that it's worth bearing in mind is I think the main reason why you need to sort of think about this potentially for a 10 marker is if you got a question about sects, for example, and your answer was more about cults, and that would obviously limit your answer. So it is useful to know, it's that kind of terminology. If it came up in the question, you kind of need to know it. So I mean, there's a previous time I think about features of a sect, and a few people use Scientology as their example, and there was a bit that's more of a that would come under the heading more of a cult, and so being aware of those differences so that you can answer the question is useful. If you got that sort of a question, you're not going to be asked what's the difference between a sect and a cult, but obviously knowing it could help you answer from one of those. Got 2 questions from Gabby. I'll go with this one first. How do you refrain from going off on tangents in a 10 marker and going on to different points? That's quite a good question because I think it is easy to go off on a tangent, especially if you decide to evaluate and you go on that's one of the reasons why I'd say avoid kind of a broad counter argument, because there is a risk that you end up answering a different question in a way. How could you do this?
I think it's a case of it's a case of when you make your point, think what happens next, and then once you've made that, you go, well, how does this work? Keep moving through a steady process. So lots of people here are talking about policies, for example. If you were doing a paragraph on policies, talk about what is the impact of the policy, what did it aim to do, was it successful? So think about a steady kind of way of getting from A to B, if you like.
That chain of analysis or chain of reasoning is your friend here. Yeah. Would you agree, Kate?
Well, I was thinking going back to the 10 marker, because obviously the policy question on the family will come up on the family, but in a 20 marker. But with the 10 marker, I think, as Craig said earlier, you've got 15 minutes, and I think that would be a real sort of. I think timing is got to be really important. So that will help you with it stopping going on a tangent. Secondly, is the idea that it's using the wording of the question in your answer. So making sure that you're following that chain of reasoning, but you actually referencing that question. That stops you going on a tangent, because it's like you said, you can easily go, you might know loads about, I don't know, I'm thinking of an idea, Wombar theory for argument's sake, and you want to get explaining that, but that's not what it's asking you to do. And it's asking you maybe to apply it or see how that works or evaluate or something around that. So it's just really conscious to read back the question and making sure you refer to it. So I think timing is one of the things that stop you, and obviously actually using the question in your answer, so actually referencing it will stop you from doing it. And making mini plans. I mean, I've said this before, but if you can put your mini plan, because obviously with the topics paper, you're going to be writing on an answer sheet, so your question paper is going to get taken away. So the temptation is to do all your planning on that. Try not to put that on your question paper. Don't cross it out, because it will be looked at and considered. And then when you've got that there, that plan will help you, and that will stop you from going on a tangent as well. So just being conscious of that, really.
Yeah, thank you. There's one on the screen there about...
Because lots of... Sorry, just going to say a quick one. Lots of people are asking the same question, which is what happens if you get the sociologist name wrong? Yeah. Nothing. Nothing. It doesn't matter. You can write the wrong... If you write the wrong name, you are not going to lose marks for it. And somebody else said, do you need to refer to the item in both paragraphs of a 10 marker? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's this one. Okay. Zainab, yeah, do you need to reference the item in both your paragraphs of the second 10 marker, the apply and the analyse? Yes, you do.
Yes.
So basically there are two caps, if you like. And so there's a cap for only doing one, and effectively that's what it means. It's just it is the holistic mark scheme essentially, but your
I think we better go on to examples of policies before some people explode. I think there's quite a few people who are really worried about policies.
It does seem to be one. Obviously, we don't want to spend...
There's lots of caps lock going on with policies. Go on.
Obviously, we don't want to spend the whole time on families and households, but yes, can you give us examples of policies on families and households? Georgia, I'm sure we can. There's also there's an interesting follow-up one from Jessica, which is how do you evaluate policies if they're facts, which is an interesting one. So we'll try and take both of those together. But let's have a look at this one first. So can you give us some examples, Craig? Katie, go on. You give us some examples.
Well, all I was going to say about the policies thing is I think we've got to get out of... I mean, this is something you need to sort of think about again. As I've mentioned this before, imagine you've got a big bag of sociological knowledge. It depends what the question is. So although we're saying give the examples of policies here, not always all those policies are going to be applicable to the question. It depends if they're going to pair that with another bit from the specification. So if it's going to be paired with how families have impacted on structure or roles within the family. So it's really important you know your policies, but are they appropriate for the question you're answering? Or you're going to say something, what's that?
Oh, that was Craig answering a question about whether he supported Liverpool or Everton. No, but
okay.
Not strictly relevant.
So policies, if I think about sort of policies in regards to the family, you've got obviously Adoption Act, contraception, sort of listing these, but obviously you might have looked at different ones. You've got marriage allowance, you've got same-sex marriage, you've got divorce. There's so many different policies, but it's thinking I've got this wealth of policies. Are they applicable to the question? So maybe if you're thinking about doing some light revision tonight, maybe jotting down a couple of policies, maybe under different headings that were most applicable to maybe childhood or structure or roles, and thinking about how they have an impact on the family, or obviously you've got policies like Equal Pay Act. So there's a whole range. I've just listed. I'm just trying to think of other policies. So there's lots more. Even educational policies have had an impact on the family, staying on education until you're 19. You've got universal credit. So there's a range of different policies that have had different impacts. I'm sure Craig can add to the list. I've just sort of listed loads. Do we need to know dates of policies? Yeah. Oh, sorry. You can go for that.
I think that when you're knowing data policies, you really kind of need to know sort of like which government brought them in, just in case the question is phrased in that way. So some people have been asking about new right policy. So new right, you're looking at the Conservative Party and some coalition policies that have been brought in. So, for example, New Right brought in Child Support Agency, which is a big one. They tend to favour policies that reinforce the traditional family. So, for example, bringing in ideas like the like universal credit, which is then paid to one person in the household. They brought back the married person's tax allowance, which means that you actually get a tax. You can transfer part of your tax allowance to your partner, which if you're married. Other new right policies I'm trying to think that came in, sort of they do tend to be very negative, cut welfare spending. Sorry, back to basics kind of ideas. Austerity policies that benefits cap, the two child benefits cap as well. There are some of the new right policies. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've seen quite a lot of comments asking about if we say the wrong government or we get the wrong date, will we lose marks? And I think a bit like we were saying about the names,
you never lose marks.
They're not going to take marks off you. It's marked positively. So, obviously the more correct information you give, the more kind of AO1 you're showing. But you're not going to have marks deducted for saying something incorrect. So if you think you know something, it seems, I reckon this is relevant, and I'm pretty sure it was there. Have a go. You know, you're not going to lose anything for saying it, and you may well be rewarded for it. There's loads and loads coming up here, which is great.
A quick question that's come through a few times that we can answer dead quickly. What's the difference between Christian and non-Christian religions? It is the basis of the faith. So sort of like those who believe in Jesus Christ, those who do not believe in Jesus Christ. So Catholicism, Protestantism are Christian religions. Non-Christian religions can be things like Islam,
Judaism, Hinduism.
Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism, all of those. That's the difference between Christian and non-Christian religions.
Now, I know we've got a lot of questions. Sorry, Kate.
So I think what that specification point is the idea that you draw from a range of examples. It's not having that sort of that's what it means. So it's not expecting to know from an RE perspective. No. You know, think about Christianity.
It's not. And that's actually a really important point. It is not an RE question. They're not expecting theological knowledge about the religious traditions. Now, lots of people have been asking about media. We're bound to talk a lot about beliefs because more people do beliefs, and there's all the stuff about ideology and science which we promised we'd come back to. We do, but I'm just wondering, shall we say a bit about media, because there are so many people asking about it at the moment. I mean, if I start with this, this one hopefully is, we can quite quickly address this one. What's the advanced info for media 20 marker, Craig?
It's the new media specification point. So it looks at the impact, how new media differs from traditional media, who owns the new media, and theoretical views of the new media, and what are the impacts of those on society. So somebody is cultural pessimist, neophilic argument enough to reference for the new media? It can be. If the question says that new media is a positive for society, evaluate the view new media is a positive for society, then what you're looking at is a neophiliac perspective versus a cultural pessimist perspective. Some will suggest, yes, the new media is fantastic for society. It increases participation. People can interact. It revitalizes democracy. I'm trying to think, it gives people more choice. There is technological convergence, versus the cultural pessimist side, which sort of like say, well, actually, we may have more choice, but it's of a lower quality. There's a lack of regulation, which means that people are, that were subject to sort of like what would see as being sort of like quite bigoted views or sort of like extreme views. And people are being trolled, cyberbullying, and because it's not being regulated properly. Other problems can lead to cultural imperialism. Also would argue that the new media is largely still controlled by big conglomerates. So for example, sort of like some of the biggest new media companies are like sort of Amazon, Alphabet, which runs Google and YouTube, Apple. They are big multinational corporations, so the new media hasn't given us this freedom that we think it has. And so that could be something that you talk about.
Yeah.
Three paragraphs and that's about the three main theories associated with it. Try to split up into two. If so, which one?
I mean, it depends what the question. It depends what the question is, doesn't it? The main point is your paragraph should be addressing the question and points that relate to the question. So it might be, main theories about new media. It's going to be to do with the new media, but you won't necessarily address your paragraph around cultural pessimism. It might be, but it does depend what the precise wording of the question is. What do you say?
I mean, general advice for a 20 marker, I would sort of like suggest is that if it's an evaluate the view question, you want to present information from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be 2 or 3 paragraphs from one side, 1 or 2 paragraphs from the other side. If it is a contributions if it's asking you about one theory, whether it's, say, for example, it's like evaluate the contributions of Marxists to our understanding of beliefs or Marxists to our understanding of the family, the bulk of your essay should be on the named theory. But if it's a debate question, you need to weigh up both sides of the debate. Lots of people are saying, should we do 4 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs? It's basically an idea of having a range of responses and dealing with them in a lot of depth or a certain amount of depth. So, I would say you're looking minimum 3. I'd probably suggest 4, but that's what I would say to my students is a minimum of 3 to 4. You could do 2 absolutely fantastic paragraphs, and that could get you in the top band. You could, but I would suggest having a good range and a good depth.
Yeah.
Making sure they're analysed and evaluated. That is the most important thing. No, I can't sit any exams for anyone.
Just before we answer Beatrice's question, I was just going to say, I mean, if you think roughly, we're saying the 10 markers do need to be 2 paragraphs. So if you just kind of scale that up, roughly we're saying 20 marks should be 4. But it's not.
You've got
no one
half
counts,
an hour to do it.
No one counts the
No one
paragraphs.
counts them.
No.
Okay. I've seen some with significantly more shorter paragraphs. I mean, you want depth though, actually. So, I think 4 meaty paragraphs is a good thing. There are lots of questions about the science and ideology. This one's also relating to families. So obviously, I'm assuming, Beatrice, you're doing families and beliefs, which is what most people do. Are the 20 markers definitely going to be on social policy and science and ideology? So I'm assuming the families, you're saying, is that definitely going to be social policy, and beliefs, is that definitely science and ideology?
The 2 specification points both. Sorry. Go on, Katie.
Just saying, that's all right. That's okay. Just saying, obviously it's a bullet point, but obviously you can talk, as we said earlier, it could be a theory question, so it doesn't necessarily have to be purely on that. Like the ideology question, and the science. They might not even ask you a question on science at all.
It could be what do evaluate the usefulness of functionalist views of religion or something, couldn't it? In theory, it could be that, because that bullet point covers quite a lot. Social policy one, I think it also includes economy and
I mean, I think somebody asked that very early on in there, and I thought one thing I was going to mention is that when it talks about reference to the economy, well, if you think about the functionalist viewpoint, it does talk about the economic function. If you think about Marxist viewpoints, they're talking about the role of capitalism and sort of like how that impacts. If you think about feminist viewpoints, they talk about the sort of things like the dual burden and unpaid labour, and that also references the economy. So I wouldn't worry too much about that reference to the economy.
No, but it's not quite as narrow as that suggests. Those bullet points do cover a bit more than that.
I think the core thing is knowing your theories. I think this is the key, and you do know them because you know them for everything. I said this right at the beginning. If you know them, you can apply that across. It's not. We're night before the exam, and I think you've got to think. Actually, I know that stuff, and it's not like Duncan's just said. It's not as narrow as like you just need to know about sociology and science, religion and science. There is that application across. Yeah.
Okay, and that links us to Tristan's question. And lots of people are asking similar things. How can you use ideology and science for a 20 marker? Question mark, a lot of question marks. Now, I have seen, I think a few years ago, there was a science one, wasn't there? Something along the lines of...
has science
replaced religion? So there has been that style of questions. That's one way. You could get a question on science. Has it replaced religion? You could get a question about does religion have a largely ideological function, that sort of thing, which ends up being a kind of Marxism, feminism type, theory question, really. And I think we said that early on that, you need to apply your theory knowledge to these questions. The science one. And again, a lot of these things interlink. So although we're sort of saying, it's about this bullet point, if you got one about the science replaced religion, part of that's going to be a bit sort of secularization and that sort of debate as well, isn't it? As well, it's not that you've got to somehow get 20 marks out of Popper and closed belief systems, whatever. That I appreciate there isn't necessarily 20 marks in that. So that I think that's sometimes
new movements as well, new religious movements in that as a way of saying it isn't replaced. So there's quite a lot of scope and respect to bring other points in. The whole point is sociology is synoptic, so be confident that you know this stuff, and it's maybe taking that time out, as I said earlier, is planning that question, thinking, well, actually, when I get this question tomorrow, I'm sitting there, what can I include from everything that I've learned?
Yeah, and do just give yourself a couple of minutes to think, what content can I include in this? Because you do know it, you have learnt it, and you are aware of it. I think sometimes the panic is, and I think that's why there are so many question marks, perhaps from Tristan, is you sort of think, oh, well, there's only a bullet point or two in my textbook or whatever on science and religion, so how can you get a full essay? The question will be worded in such a way that there's actually quite a lot you can say about it, and it won't be just on that one narrow point. Yeah.
Okay, it's worth saying. Lots of people are asking about global development and different things. Well, if you go into Tutor to Use Tutor to Use YouTube channel, there are a number of different lists about the different spec points on there for global development, for media, work, poverty, and welfare has just gone up. Families, beliefs, all of those different ones are on there. Strat, I've been doing them today, so they should be up soon.
I mean, there are lots and lots of questions coming up about the different topics. I don't want to do them all on families and beliefs, but there's a quick family one here. Could the 20 marker be on the personal life perspective of family?
You go for it, Craig, or
I think that comes under the family diversity spec point. Personally.
That's where I'd expect to see it as well. Yeah, or that's where I'd expect to see it as well. So,
but remember, it can come up as a 10 marker. So
could.
We've got to remember that it's only half the paper we're talking about is 20 markers,
and it might come in as, you might be able to bring it in evaluatively. If it's about something to do with the family and the economy or something like that, you could say you could bring it in as the contemporary family is more about personal choice and all that kind of thing. So it's quite a nice thing to put in a conclusion, as well, depending on what the question is. So it's not that you wouldn't use it, but it won't,
won't be the focus.
I wouldn't expect it to be the focus based on the advanced information. No.
Someone's put a question
around. People are asking about. Go on.
I was going to say, look, people ask questions for conclusions about policies and different things you could write in conclusions. I think we've maybe mentioned it before, but what would be nice is if you could come down on one side. If it's an evaluate question like we talked about and making a judgment, obviously not using your perspective, it's through a theory, is doing that. And sort of coming down on one side on the question.
What's the likelihood of child-centeredness being a question? Could be a 10 marker, couldn't it?
Yeah. Could be a 10 marker.
I mean, you could look at it through policy, like I've said earlier. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't necessarily be the main focus, but you potentially could say how it's how policies have created child-centeredness potentially, but it wouldn't be like this again the sole focus of it. So thinking about, we've talked about the Children's Act and the policies around the family in regards to how they've had an impact on childhood.
If we run out of time and bullet point some things with some detail, will it still get marks?
Yes. Quite simply, yes. Anything you put on a script, sort of like can potentially be marked. If you are running out of time, it is best to put down a few points. Of course, it wouldn't get the same as if you'd done it in continuous prose, but they will, you'll be rewarded for what you put onto that paper. So don't worry too much about
that. There's so many questions here, and I'm sorry if I'm missing your question. I do apologise. I'm scrolling through while I try and find some. If anyone sees
quite a lot around
quotes.
I did see that one.
In Bible quotes, there's a few that sort of kind of prove Marxist views of religion. So it's easier to pass for a man to pass through a rich man to pass through the eye of a needle than it is to enter the kingdom of heaven. That type of thing, you can potentially use that to show you that you understand the way in which religion has an ideological basis. So you could use that. Will they still mark a crossed out paragraph? Probably not.
No, but I just wouldn't cross it out if you want it to be considered.
If you think there's something worthwhile in it, don't.
Same with the plum.
Yeah, and remember, it's like we talked about positive marking. So at the end of the day, if it's not correct, it just get ignored anyhow. So there's some people wanting some stuff around culture and identity as well. And I know that Craig's mentioned we've got stuff on the website, but.
Just before we do that, can I just, Alex, we'll leave families after this. I won't take any more families questions after this one. But there was please break down the family advance info as I don't understand it. Now we have got quite a lot on the out there about this, but I think I understand. I appreciate the question because it's not perhaps as straightforward what it covers as perhaps some of the others.
It's largely the theories of the family. That includes functionalism, Marxism, I would say feminism as well. Then you also have social policies and how they might impact on different elements. Now that I think that might go off into different spec points. Then you also have theoretical views of social policies. And this was a question that was asked in either 2018 or 2019 on the AS paper. So if you want to have a look at an example of that, it asked about the different theoretical perspectives. What do Marxists think about social policy? What do feminists think about social policy? What do functionists think about social policy? So that could be on that specification point and how it links into how it performs certain functions for society.
Okay, I hope that helped, Alex.
You've just popped it up there. Theoretical perspectives on family policy.
Brilliant. There's also a few people. I think Ellie's asked this question a lot, so I'll typed it a couple of times. So I'll just go. Social stratification. The advanced information is the 20 marker just focusing on the theories of stratification.
I would largely say yes. I would say you need to know your Marxist view. You need to know your functionist view, and the three I would look at there is like Durkheim, Parsons, and Davison Moore. You've got your Marxist view, so you're looking at the work of Marx, Frankfurt School of Marcuse, and Eric Olin Wright. They're the three that you probably need to know for Marxism. Your feminist viewpoint as well. So your postmodern, and I'm trying to think of the other one off the top of my head that we've written. It's gone from the top of my head. And the other kind of viewpoint on that, Weberian views of stratification.
Okay, just a general 20 marker question there before I try and find those culture and identity ones that Katie mentioned. How many times should they need to reference the item in a 20 marker?
Good practice. Sorry, go on, Katie.
I was going to say there's nothing on the there's nothing on the mark scheme that you have to, unlike the 10 marker where you have to. But you were about to say some good practice, so I don't want to over talk you. So it's nice if you can include. Obviously, it's there for a reason. It's there as a prompt. It's there to sort of direct you in the right direction. But you won't lose marks from not referencing the 20 marker as you would do obviously in the 10 marker where you've actually got to reference the item. But go for it, Craig.
I was just going to say, good practice. I would do it at least once.
Okay, Fada, please can we break down? Once. Yeah, please can we break down the culture?
Don't get worked up if you don't.
No. I would agree with Craig. Yeah, so that there's never been any suggestion that there's a cap or anything like that, but it does say in the question using the item and your own knowledge. So
the items are
and it's really useful.
Are really good. Yeah, the items are really good for showing you, particularly in the 20 markers, for showing you the two kind of sides that you might need to argue in a debate, or some variations. So they might give you some hints. Always read them. Try and use them if you can.
Yeah. So we had a couple of comments saying, "Stop talking about families. Do culture and identity or beliefs, please." So Nadia has asked, "Could we break the culture and identity advanced information point down in the way that we've just done for a couple of the other areas?" And yeah, I mean, obviously, Craig, you've been doing some videos on this, haven't you? So it's sort of fresher in your mind, but it's the different sort of types of culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. There's lots of different types of culture, and sort of like obviously then you could have different theoretical views on those, on how culture forms. So you have the different types of culture. You're looking at global culture, folk culture, mass culture, popular culture, high culture, low culture. Trying to think of them off the top of my head. There's a lot of information there. And then sort of the different theoretical views about how culture forms. So functionalism, Marxism, feminism, postmodernism, and how they view culture. And I feel like I've left one out, interactionism, and sort of like how they see culture going out, how they see culture forming. A lot of that more is kind of based on a lot of the theoretical views go across things like culture and identity and culture and socialization. Please, for the love of God, talk about global development. Yeah, we will do. There's and sort of like so I find that culture and identity one is a very difficult topic area to sort of like suggest which is what type of question might come up, because it could be that say for example it might be global culture has replaced mass culture. It could be that mass culture has replaced folk cultures, and then you've got all of the different theorists arguing whether it has or it hasn't.
Yeah,
just a point about cultural identity, and I know when I moved to global is something that's worth noting with the cultural identity one is not all theories will be applicable to every type of culture. So sometimes I find you might find that students are sort of there's more better theories for dealing with obviously we want a range of theories, but there's some that probably best not to explore for that question. So for example, Marxism would be the better theory to talk about when you're talking about mass or high culture or low culture, but maybe it won't be so useful to talk about another theory potentially. Just sort of be selective, and that's the key, isn't it?
Fantastic. Quite a few people have asked about global development, so I didn't want to, and it's
just one or two.
Yeah, and it's mine,
it's
Craig's favourite.
Yeah,
and I think it's Craig's favourite as well. So,
oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I'm going to keep out of this. You can go, guys.
So we ought to mention it before we shut down for the evening. But it's quite a broad bullet point, the global development one, isn't it? So it picks on a few of the kind of topics surrounding development. Again, Craig's done some fairly recent videos on this, so if you've got them straight to hand, I'll go to you, but otherwise I'll do a quicker. I just want to make sure I don't say the wrong ones. But no, yeah,
it's advanced. Global development is aid, trade, industrialization, urbanization, environment, war and conflict, which is quite a big spec point.
It's a lot.
You're also, through those, you're looking at the kind of underpinning theories, which is modernization, dependency, neoliberal. To a lesser extent, you can talk about things like post-development theory as well. Some people may have been taught that, and world systems theory, you may have been taught that as well. The idea would be is that you may have a debate question that talks about aid being better than trade, trade being better than aid, in which sense you would have to weigh up both sides of those debates to see whether trade is better or aid is better. It could be the impacts of industrialization on other aspects of development. So how has industrialization impacted on things like gender, education, all of those different type of things. Impacts of urbanization, and what might be some of the impacts of urbanization. You could get a straight out war and conflict question, which talks about either the causes or the impacts of war and conflict, which again is quite a broad question. It is, I would say, after looking at all of the different spec points, I think global development has got one of the biggest spec points to cover.
I think that's true.
It is quite a chunky one.
It's chunky.
I would say always link it back to your theories. Think about as modernization, always think West is best. They always think the Western way of doing things is best. Or dependency, they always suggest that in most aspects of it, they suggest that there is this element of cultural imperialism, that we're trying to get everybody to be like the West and be reliant upon the West. They're Marxists essentially, so they're always going to be very critical of what happens. Yeah. And then your neoliberal, who are very contradictory in a way, they will sort of like say, no, we don't think aid is a good thing, but we're going to use it to improve trade. And we are going to use it to be able. We think that things like industrialization are good because it helps develop the economy. And we talk about urbanization, moving people into cities. That's good because it helps the economy, things like that.
Yeah. Emily has asked, so thanks for that, Craig. That's brilliant. Can I thank everyone's patience for when we're talking about a topic that's not your topic. Obviously, everyone's had a bit of that today. So I know there are a few people saying, "Why are you still talking about families?" Whatever. And obviously, you're all doing different topics. Most do families though, so we do have to sort of, we'll have to do it this a little bit this way. So these ones, we do get a few nice general ones which apply to everyone, and here's one of those. Emily, what happens if you use the item but don't say the item states, but you can clearly see you used it? Will you lose marks? No. And if you can clearly see you used it, that's brilliant. So maybe use quotation marks or stick item in brackets after it, or make it nice, and particularly with the 10 marker, the apply and analyze, make it nice and obvious you've used it.
Make it obvious.
Although I would say not to potentially highlight, because highlight can't always be seen
in the scan or whatever, when it's scanned or whatever. Just make it nice and
obvious
you've used it.
It might be obvious to you, but it might not be obvious when it's sent away as such. So just make it obvious in another way. Yeah.
So quotation marks, item A in brackets, or whatever the item letter is. The item states is fine, but I appreciate sometimes if you've got time wise, you might not want to write that out in full. Okay, now we have been going nearly 50 minutes, so we are going to have to start wrapping things up. So I probably, should we say, we'll take two more questions. Now this gets really difficult then, doesn't it?
You've got to choose that.
Someone has been asking something a lot, so hang on, just let me try and find that one, because I have seen that question loads, and if they've been asking it an awful lot, we'll do want to try. Could there be a 20 mark on who uses the new media? I think I've seen. I don't know if it was every time, Laura, yes. But it has been asked a lot. Yes, so
it's a non-spec point.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously we're not in the business of predicting questions, quite what the new media question could look like. There are a few things they could ask. Part of that could be who uses it. So yeah, it could come up, and then lots of people have sort of followed that with things about,
digital
what else
divide
could be in
seems
that.
to be the big thing that the digital divide seems to be the big thing, and that when you're talking about who uses the new media, knowing that sort of like it does tend to be the younger generations who are more likely to use it, although it kind of tapers off as you get older, but that's something that's there.
Okay, I've got another one here. What do we do if we want to add a paragraph in, but we've already wrote where it should go? If you feel that it's important that it goes earlier, that you've passed that point, you can do a little asterisk and a draw a line or whatever. It'll be clear that that's where it should be. So yeah, that's fine. Don't worry too much about that. Just stick it, just by whatever means, just show that that's where you intended it to go. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just having. I did say two more, so that's it, really, isn't it? And someone said theirs is frozen.
Can we we did a little bit. So lots of people asking social stratification. They go through it very, very briefly. But an advice on a stratification essay, looking at the specification point, right? It's very difficult to see what type of essay it is. It may be a straightforward theories one, and that would therefore be evaluate the contributions of functionalists to our understanding of stratification and differentiation, and then you would talk about functionalist contributions, Marxist contributions, feminist contributions. It could also be a kind of, evaluate the view that society is meritocratic, which obviously suggests on one side functionalism, and then you might criticize that with Marxism or feminism or postmodernism on the other side. So there's quite a few asked there about structuring social strat.
Yeah, there have also been quite a few about health, so maybe we could end with a little mention of health. Also, I just want to point out that there was no favouritism in the choosing of the questions. According to Mike, the M&M girl has got up there 3 times. That is totally purely by chance, and not because I'm hungry.
That's just because Duncan likes M&Ms.
Okay. So
likes M&Ms.
So health. There's no info online, please! ! There's a bit of info online because we've done a little bit, but yeah, I know what you mean. So what does that bullet point cover for health?
It's the last bullet point. So you're looking at the role of medical professionals, and you're looking at the globalized health industry. So you're looking at the different theoretical perspectives on the role of medical professionals, functionalist perspective, Marxist perspective, feminist perspectives on the role of interactionists as well, on how medical professionals will interact with individuals, how they can potentially act as gatekeepers to people's healthcare.
Does that include the globalized health industry as well? That come in there as well? Yeah.
So for example, Marxists will talk about the idea that that medical professionals often are serving the needs of big pharma, and things like that. So there is the link between those in there.
So that's the focus of the 20 mark question. Obviously, the 10 markers could be on anything else that you've learned on health.
Yeah, 10 markers can go anywhere else.
Yeah. How
might the word and environment 20 marker? Evaluate the view that development harms the environment, or the needs of development come before those of environment.
There you go. Back to global development there for a favourite. Okay. So I think I'm going to take that off. I think we're going to leave it there. But thank you for all your questions, and I'm really sorry if we didn't get to your question or if we didn't spend enough time on your topic area. But we have gone through a very wide range of areas, and I hope it's been helpful. And the main thing I hope is that it hasn't been scary, and that it has only been helpful. And I'll just reiterate what I said at the start, really, is that if any of us or anyone in the chat window has mentioned a study that you don't know, don't panic about that. You'll know some that they don't know. If we've talked about a theory that doesn't feel familiar, don't worry about it. You have spent the last 2 years learning about this. The questions will be asked in such a way as to, find out, your knowledge, for you to show what you know and for you to address the question and answer it. So really don't go in there worrying about it or panicking about it. I have seen a few comments that sound a little bit on the panicky side. You've got this. You'll be great. Okay. Any final thoughts from? Sorry, go on, Craig.
I'll let Katie go. Sorry.
Okay. Final thoughts from Katie, and then final thoughts from Craig.
My final thought is, I would have, I know it's easier said than done. I think, put a cap on any revision you're doing tonight and get an early night, get to bed early, relax, and then tomorrow obviously is the exam day. So you just need to be prepared, have a good breakfast. I know it sounds very simple stuff, that it doesn't sound like that groundbreaking, but at the end of the day, you've worked really hard. You've worked hard in very difficult conditions. At the end of the day, we've had the 2 years that we've had, and actually you deserve just a chance to show off what you know. And just get an early night, guys, because you've done all the work. You probably know more than you think you do. So just take care and have a nice rest tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig, what were you going to say?
But there's lots of really kind of lovely comments kind of coming through there in terms of stuff. Like somebody's just offered me a bounty Easter egg to do their exam. I think I'm not sure. I don't like bounties. Sorry, I don't think anyone does. But no, the point is that this is the second paper of 3. Give it your best shot. You can only do what happens on the day. Certainly. After the last 2 years that you lot have had, I would, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going to go with them. I'm going to get all emotional. No, the idea is, no, I think you've had a really tough time over the last 2 years, and I think it's one of those where it's like, go and give it your best shot.
And I'm really sorry. I'm just saying 2 more things. I'm just going to mention them quickly. Difference between New Age and New Religious movements, very quickly. New Age movements could be an example of a New Religious movement. New Religious movement, so anything from sects to any New Religious movement that's sort of more recent than churches, etc. New Age movement is more specific for kind of crystal healing and meditation and all that kind of thing. So they're just slightly different things, but you could consider New Age movement under the umbrella. And there was another one, but anyway, I've lost it now. I think it was about science as a social construct, which someone had asked a lot. So just very quickly, so many of us have asked for science as a social construct. So there's the idea that science, I guess it sort of, I don't know whether you'd agree, Craig, it sort of comes in a similar territory to science being a meta-narrative and science. So it's, the kind of postmodern view on science, that it's not necessarily the objective fact that, because what we normally say about science is objective fact, it's tested, it's empirical, it's research. And it's the suggestion that actually, just like anything else, just like religion, potentially, arguably, or ideology, arguably, it's kind of constructed by society, and from a postmodern perspective, it's just another big story that tells the truth of equal validity to other ones. Is there anything you'd add?
Even from sort of like interactionist and Marxist perspective, they would also sort of like suggest that science actually serves the needs of certain groups. Feminists would say that as well. So you can say that sort of like science and some of the laws that are created, even though we see them as facts, they are based upon somebody has made a decision, and that's why it becomes a social construct.
Exactly, and it
Okay.
brings back into ideology, isn't it? It's ultimately an ideology as well, arguably science, but hey.
Yeah. Fantastic. Before I see
I love
any other
that.
questions
Is there
and
a
risk putting
post-credit
them up,
scene?
I'm gonna before I risk seeing any more, I'm gonna stop. Actually, there's people asking about a politics one. I think it's only I don't know how many of you do politics, but I think we are going to try and do one on Wednesday at 5 o'clock for for paper 2. So yeah, join us there if you do politics. Okay. I'm gonna stop because they're on to debates about which are better, bounties or I don't know what the other one was now. So we will finish there. So thank you very much for all your questions. You've been brilliant. You are going to be great. Thank you very much, Craig and Katie, for all your work. People, are we going to do one for paper 3 as well? We will. We'll let you know when we're doing it. Okay. Cheers, guys.
We're doing the grade booster for 3.
Yeah, we'll do a grade booster
live stream.
Sorry. Do you mean, are we doing a live stream into the grade booster or a live stream here to YouTube? We'll do both. We'll do both. Okay. Right. Cheers, guys. See you all. Bye-bye.
Good luck. Look after yourselves. Bye. Thinking of you tomorrow.